What would you do if you discovered the person you fell in love with wasn't who they claimed to be? Tonight, you're about to hear the story of a man who had everything: wealth, power, and status, yet chose to hide it all behind a mask of struggle. A millionaire CEO who disguised himself as broke just to test the purity of love, only to end up on a blind date that not only changed his life but touched the lives of his young twin children forever. By the end of this story, you may find yourself questioning what true love really looks like. David Reynolds was the kind of man people wrote about in business magazines. At only 35, he was the youngest CEO in his city's history, running a multi-million-dollar tech empire he had built from scratch. Yet, behind the corner office, expensive suits, and luxury cars, David carried a loneliness so deep that even his wealth couldn't bury it. He was a widower. His wife, Claire, had passed away suddenly 5 years earlier, leaving him to raise their twins, Lily and Lucas, on his own. The children were his whole world, but despite the nannies, tutors, and endless privileges he provided, something was missing: someone to love them like a mother and someone to stand beside him as a partner. But there was one problem. Every woman who showed interest in him seemed to have an ulterior motive. They loved the money, the fame, the name, but not the man underneath. So, David made a radical decision. If he were ever to fall in love again, it would have to be with someone who loved him for his heart, not his bank account. He quietly created a simple online dating profile, not as David Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Tech, but as David R., a single father working odd jobs, trying to make ends meet. He posted a picture of himself in a plain t-shirt with his twins on his lap, no mansion in the background, no flashy cars, just a man and his children. That's when Sarah entered the picture. She was a young teacher, passionate about kids and fiercely independent. Sarah wasn't wealthy. She lived in a modest apartment and spent most of her income taking care of her sick mother. Yet, her smile lit up any room, and her heart was full of compassion. When she came across David's profile, she didn't swipe left because of his ordinary job. Instead, she was drawn to the way he talked about his twins, the way his words radiated love, responsibility, and vulnerability. Their first messages were cautious but warm. They talked about books, favorite childhood memories, and what it meant to be family. Soon, David found himself looking forward to her messages more than anything else in his day. After weeks of chatting, Sarah agreed to meet him for a blind date. David was nervous, more nervous than he had been walking into multi-million-dollar board meetings, because this time, he wasn't just risking his heart, but also his secret. The night of the blind date, he showed up in faded jeans and a simple shirt. He drove an old car he kept from his college days instead of one of his luxury sedans. When Sarah walked into the cafe, David couldn't believe his eyes. She wasn't glamorous in the way most women he met were: no expensive jewelry, no designer clothes. Yet, there was something about her presence that made the whole room fade. Her smile was genuine, her laughter unforced. They spent hours talking, and for the first time in years, David felt like a man again, not a CEO, not a billionaire, just a man who wanted to be understood. Over the next few weeks, David introduced Sarah to Lily and Lucas. He told her he didn't have much, but Sarah never cared. She would show up with board games, spend evenings helping them with homework, or cook simple meals with them in the kitchen. The twins adored her, and David's heart swelled every time he saw the three of them together. For the first time in years, the house felt like a home again, but secrets have a way of catching up. One evening, while Sarah was picking the twins up from school, a fellow parent who knew David from the business world casually mentioned how lucky she was to be dating the famous Reynolds CEO. Sarah was shocked. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but when she Googled his name, the truth stared back at her: articles, interviews, photos of David in designer suits and on Forbes covers. Her heart sank. That night, Sarah confronted him. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" she asked, her eyes filled with hurt. David tried to explain how he had been used before, how he needed to know if she loved him for him. But Sarah felt betrayed. "Do you think so little of me?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She walked out, leaving David shattered, the twins confused, and the house once again unbearably quiet. Days turned into weeks, and David realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life, not in hiding his wealth, but in not trusting Sarah enough to eventually share the truth. Meanwhile, Sarah battled her own heart. She couldn't deny the bond she had with the twins or the way David made her feel. Yet, the pain of betrayal was heavy. It was Lily who finally broke the silence. One afternoon, the little girl called Sarah from her dad's phone, her tiny voice trembling. "Miss Sarah," she said softly, "Daddy's been so sad without you. We miss you. Please don't leave us." That call shattered the wall Sarah had built around herself. She realized love was messy, complicated, and imperfect, but real. The next evening, Sarah showed up at David's house. She found him sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the fire. When he saw her, his eyes widened in disbelief. She walked over, sat beside him, and whispered, "I don't care about the money. I care about you, about the kids. But you have to promise me no more lies." David took her hands in his, tears in his eyes. "No more lies," he vowed. From that day forward, he lived not as a CEO who had to guard his heart but as a man who was finally ready to share it. Their love blossomed, stronger than before. Sarah became a part of their family, not because of the mansion or the money, but because she filled their lives with warmth, laughter, and love. In time, they married in a small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. The twins stood proudly at their sides, knowing their father had finally found the missing piece of their family. And so, the story of a millionaire CEO who pretended to be broke ended not in betrayal, but in redemption, a reminder that true love isn't measured by wealth or status, but by trust, honesty, and the courage to let someone end up be. By the end of this story, maybe you, too, are left with one question. If you had nothing but your heart to offer, would love still find you?